With her newfound wealth, Mrs. Winwood's life changed dramatically. She joined the Women's Widow Club, where women would spend money like pepper at celebrations, live luxurious life, drink alcohol, and spend quality time with prominent men. Her wardrobe transformed, filled with the latest fashion, and she started drinking alcohol, something she had never done before. One of her prominent friends, Alhaji Bello, was generous. He opened a restaurant for her with a small bush bar, where prominent men would come in the evening to drink, relax, and spend quality time. Once upon a time, in a small village called Umeze, there lived a well-known family, the Winwood's family. Mr. Winwood was a popular shoemaker in the local market, famous for his craftsmanship and the quality of his shoes. He is tall, huge, and dark in complexion. His wife, Mrs. Winwood, is a beautiful, chubby young woman. She is fair in complexion. She was a talented hairdresser loved by all her clients for her creative hairstyles. The couple were blessed with 3 children: Ada, the eldest daughter, Chuka, the second child, and Obioma, the youngest. The Winwood family was doing well, and their children were attending the best school in the community. Every Saturday, Mrs. Winwood would take her children to the farm to harvest cassava. The family would spend the afternoon peeling the cassava and processing it into gari, a staple food in their household. Sundays were devoted to church, where Mrs. Winwood was a dedicated member, attending every service and activity with her children. Mr. Winwood worked tirelessly to pay the school fees and take care of his family. He was a loving husband who always supported his wife's endeavors and ensured the family had everything they needed. But one fateful day, Mr. Winwood began to feel unwell. At first, it was just a slight fever, but as days turned into weeks, his condition worsened. He could no longer go to his shop, and the burden of supporting the family fell entirely on his wife. Mrs. Winwood continued to run her hairdressing shop, but the income was not enough to cover all their expenses. She was desperate to help her husband. She sold all the shoes in his shop to gather money for his treatment and to feed the family. Despite all her efforts, Mr. Winwood's illness persisted. 6 months later, he succumbed to the illness, leaving his wife and children behind. The loss of Mr. Winwood was a heavy blow to the family. Mrs. Winwood mourned her husband deeply for 6 months. She wore only black, a symbol of her grief. Life became increasingly difficult for the Winwood family without Mr. Winwood's income, love, and care. They struggled to pay school fees and even to feed themselves. Her children stopped going to school because she can no longer afford to pay school fees. Mrs. Winwood's hairdressing business was not as profitable as it was before. Things became difficult for them, and she had no one to support her take care of the children. Azoma was the only friend she had, and she's doing perfectly well financially and otherwise. She found herself visiting her friend Azoma more often. Azoma was a widow too, left with 3 children to care for. She owned a big restaurant and a bush bar, where prominent men and women came to relax and drink. Azoma worked tirelessly to support her children and had resorted to selling her body to prominent men who visited her establishment. This side business brought her a lot of money, and she wore expensive clothes and jewelry, becoming one of the most talked about women in the community. As Mrs. Winwood spent more time with Azoma, she began to lock up her hairdressing shop, spending most of her days helping out in Azoma's restaurant. Azoma would always give her some money as thanks for coming. With the little money Azoma gave her, she would go home and prepare food for her children, and they would enjoy it happily without knowing the source of the money. Over time, Mrs. Winwood became more involved in Azoma's lifestyle. She met many of Azoma's prominent male friends and started forming relationships with them. These men began to give her money, which she used to take care of her children. Mrs. Winwood had to enroll her children back to school and pay their school fees because she's now saving money through Azoma's connection. With her newfound wealth, Mrs. Winwood's life changed dramatically. She joined the Women's Widow Club, where women would spread money like pepper at celebrations, live luxurious life, drink alcohol, and spend quality time with prominent men. Her wardrobe transformed, filled with latest fashion and expensive clothes, and she started drinking alcohol, something she had never done before. One of her prominent friends, Alhaji Bello, was particularly generous. He opened a restaurant for her with a small bush bar where prominent men would come in the evening to drink, relax, and spend quality time. Mrs. Winwood's business flourished and she became well known in the community. Alhaji Bello visited her often and they spent a lot of time together. However, as she continued her new lifestyle, she found herself pregnant and unsure of who the father was. The pregnancy was an unexpected turn in her life, and she tried to terminate it, but it didn't work. She carried the pregnancy to a full term, and during the childbirth, complications arose. Mrs. Winwood lost her life, leaving her children behind. During Mrs. Winwood's funeral, the Widows Club were present, and they spread money as usual. Ada and her siblings felt very bad about the kind of lifestyle their mother lived and how it took her life. Alhaji Bello didn't care about Mrs. Winwood's children after their mother died. He ended every business he had with the family immediately he found out that Mrs. Winwood was pregnant. Azoma and other members of the Widows Club sold Mrs. Winwood's properties, including her big restaurant and other things she left behind. They didn't care about the children she left behind. Their club continued to boom as they always gather for parties and enjoy themselves with men of different calibers. Mrs. Winwood's eldest daughter, Ada, was the caretaker for her siblings. They were taken in by a kind-hearted citizen who promised to see them through their education. Ada, despite the loss and hardship, was determined to make something out of her life and protect her siblings. The Winwood's family faced so many challenges, but they grew stronger and focused, knowing that their parents had done their best to provide for them. The kind-hearted citizen who promised to see them through education continued to take care of them, and things were moving perfectly well for them. Ada studied nursing in school. After her graduation, she got a job in one of the big hospitals located at the city. She was able to take care of her siblings, and they were all doing well. They lived a transparent life and vowed never to be like their mother, who ended her life as an unfaithful widow.